activity with this group of fine activists, and also Casey for all of your organizing, and Dr. Doyle, it's a privilege to be here with you also, and Conrad, and to all of you who have sustained such a long-standing care and concern about nonviolence and about the possibilities that we could create a world wherein it's easier to be good. And I guess I'd like to check with a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, I hope I'm not blasting people out in the front with that high school study teacher's voice that never quite goes away. I want to start by telling you something that was sort of an epiphany realization for me, and it's a bit of an oddball way to approach the topic of nonviolence and war making and the cost of war. But it was a kind of a time when it was almost like a story in my own history, was a prophecy to myself. I graduated from Loyola University at the time when, for students here, you may not believe it, that you could walk away from your studies after you graduated and owe your overdue library fine, period. And so, Casey, I'm just going to take this off and hold it. Is that okay? I think, is that better? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So anyway, I had, however, needed, like any other student at that time, to have a part-time job and a summertime job and a weekend job. And as it turned out, the summer... As it turned out, the summer job that I had was one that my sister recruited me for. I had been working at the Continental Bank in downtown Chicago, and my sister Loretta said, "Oh, Kath, you can make more money. I'm on the night shift at Rose Packing Company." So my mercenary little heart thought that would be an okay deal, and so for 11 cents more per hour, I turned up at the Rose Packing Company on a summer morning, and I walked in and there were cavernous sounds going on with various machines that were processing the meat, and in the middle of the packing company floor, the factory floor of the main hall, there were big pools of water and blood and pieces of meat floating in the pools. And I was assigned to put on a white smock that didn't stay white very long, and yellow rubber gloves and goggles and combat boots and a hairnet. And I was told to stand on a milk crate that was upside down in front of a great huge vat of frozen pork loins. And I was given a long steel hook with a kind of a T-bar, and my instruction, which was just to sling. So there began my career slinging pork loins, and well, you know, it can get a little boring. They were thawing pork loins in a vat that had previously been frozen, but by the time I was on my milk crate in front of this vat full of thawing pork loins, I would stab one and put it on the conveyor belt, and then it would go through the pickle juice machine, which would also squirt pickle juice in my eyes. And after the first hour, I think I'd gone through every memorized prayer I'd ever known. And by the second hour, you'd think I was Julie Andrews. I'd done every Broadway tune I knew. Third hour, I was going through poetry and what I could remember of Shakespeare. By the fourth hour, I was thinking those Jesuits better have some mighty good courses lined up. And so I spent actually 2 summers. I went back a second summer to the Rose Packing Company. Now, the reason I tell you this long, involved story is not so much because I want us to think together about animal rights or vegetarian beliefs. I actually, when I did the job that my sister had on the night shift, it was a very easy job. You just pressed your foot on a pedal, and that squirted the waste material into a plastic bag, and that's how they made hot dogs and sausages at the Rose Packing Company. So I did become a vegetarian. But the reason I want to remember this story with you is because it just happened in January of 2010. I suddenly realized that if anyone had ever said to me in the ensuing years up until January of 2010, "Kathy Kelly, you slaughtered animals," I would have said, oh no, there are lots of Kathy Kellys, you got the wrong one. I'm a city girl, I never killed an animal. But I did. I was part and parcel of a process. I was at the other end of it, granted, but it certainly was for the purpose of gaining 11 cents per hour, my practice for those 2 summers to be integrally involved every day from sunup till sundown in the killing of animals. Why was that on my mind so much? I think in January 2010, somehow my subconscious brought that up because I have been, like I'm sure many of you, asking myself, how can it be? We're on the 10th year of war with Afghanistan, and in our country, most people have forgotten about a war that still goes on. And yes, the word slaughter comes to mind if you're living in Afghanistan. And it took me some 30 years to reclaim the memory. We don't have those 30 years. One of the ways to stop a next war is to tell the truth about this war. How can we tell the truth about a war that our populace has by and large forgotten about? And what about the cost of that war? It's so hard to even think about it because we don't think in these terms, $3 million per day. What can it mean to spend $3 million every day on this faraway war? $2 billion a week, sums of money in the trillions. It's so difficult for us to relate to this war that we've, in many cases, already forgotten about. And so I've been very grateful, very privileged to be in Afghanistan 3 times in 2010 with a plan to return in the middle of March of next month. And if some of you would like to go with me, you are very, very welcome to consider that. But I'd like to spend time today telling you some of what I learned while in Afghanistan. One of the things that has been of great curiosity to me is how do the military manage to spend $3 million per day? And so there's one way that I might be able to help explain that. I was in the emergency surgical center for victims of war, and sorry, I want to get to a map here. Anyway, in this emergency surgical center for victims of war, where I stayed during my first trip to Afghanistan in 2009 in May,